Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. After 20 years in the Navy, I thought I'd seen it all: storms, war zones, betrayal. But nothing prepared me for the suburban war that erupted the moment I moved into my quiet mountain retreat and said no to a clipboard-wielding tyrant named Karen. After 20 years in the Navy, surviving typhoons, desert dust storms, and one messy divorce, I thought I had seen it all. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what I encountered 3 days after moving into my quiet slice of paradise in North Georgia. My name is Jordan Reeves, 38 years old, retired lieutenant, survival instructor. I don't rattle easily, so when I bought a long-abandoned property on the edge of Chattahoochee Falls at a county tax auction, I wasn't expecting a warm neighborhood welcome, just peace, trees, and a roof I could trust to hold out the rain. The house had stood empty for 4 years. The gutters sagged. The siding was faded like an old sea chart, but it had bones. Good bones. I signed all the papers through the county clerk, verified the boundaries, paid the bank wire, and collected notarized proof of ownership. That land was mine. Legally, irrefutably, unequivocally mine. I moved in with a shipping container full of gear, a custom-built water filtration system, and enough solar panels to blind a bear at sunrise. For 2 days, I was busy rewiring the fuse box, clearing dead limbs from the roof, and setting up security cameras on the tree line. On the 3rd day, the grill finally came out. I figured I'd earned a proper meal after busting my back-hauling barrels and wiring up the inverter system. I was standing barefoot on the front porch, sipping a cold beer and flipping a ribeye over the flames when I noticed movement near the gravel path. 2 figures were marching toward my gate, one holding a clipboard like it was a holy relic, the other wearing a bright orange vest that read HOA Inspection Patrol. My first thought, they were selling pest control. My second thought, nope, Jehovah's Witnesses don't wear badges. The woman led the charge. Mid-50s, blonde bob cut so sharp it could probably slice a zucchini, perfectly ironed khakis, and a pinched face that looked like it hadn't smiled since Bush was president. She stepped right up to the fence without so much as a hello and said, "Sir, you are in violation of Willow Hills Extension HOA policies. May we enter the premises?" I raised an eyebrow. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Karen Mason, president of the Willow Hills Extension Homeowners Association." She tapped her badge with authority, as if it came with federal backing. "This property is located within our jurisdiction. We've reviewed the matter, and unfortunately, you've failed to register your residency. Submit an architectural compliance form or pay your initiation dues." The man next to her, skinny, twitchy, mid-30s, looked like he wanted to speak, but was waiting for orders. I put the tongs down on the plate, wiped my hands on a rag, and stepped off the porch. "I think you're confused," I said, keeping my tone even. "This property was never part of Willow Hills. I bought it from the county directly. It's not within your HOA, and I don't owe you a thing." Karen gave me that kind of smirk people get when they think they know something you don't. "Our development plan was extended 2 years ago. Your property falls within our adjusted boundary. Therefore, you are legally obligated to register." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Ma'am, this house has been standing here since the 70s. Your development came in around, 2018? I checked. I read every zoning document before I signed. My parcel is rural, unincorporated, and not subject to your bylaws." Karen's nostrils flared. She pulled a glossy brochure from her clipboard and slapped it against the gate. "All new residents must submit to review. There's a mandatory meeting tomorrow evening at the clubhouse. Attendance is not optional. You will bring 2 forms of ID, sign the compliance agreement, and pay the $8,000 initiation fee. And you will surrender your current gate keys so we can issue approved access fobs." That's when it clicked. She actually believed she had authority here. I stepped a little closer, just enough to lower my voice so it didn't carry past the trees. "Lady, you're not my government. You're not my HOA. You're not even on my property. I don't owe you access. I don't owe you a dime. And if you set foot past that gate, I'll consider it trespassing." Karen blinked like a lizard seeing daylight. The clipboard shook slightly in her hand. Her partner looked like he wanted to disappear into his vest. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't touch the gate. I just stood there and waited. "We'll see about that," Karen hissed. "You can't just squat in a community house and pretend the rules don't apply to you." "Wasn't squatting when I paid the county clerk and wired money to a local bank," I replied. Now, unless you have a warrant or a surveyor's stamp that says otherwise, I suggest you take your HOA patrol and march it right back where it came from." She turned sharply and stormed off, heels clicking like she was leading a military parade. The clipboard guy followed, glancing back once like he wanted to apologize but didn't dare. I walked back to the porch, flipped the steak, and muttered to myself, "That woman's got brass." But no map. The grill hissed and popped as the sun started to dip behind the ridge. I took a long sip from my beer and thought, that was weird, but maybe that's the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning started like any other, quiet, fog-draped, with that damp mountain chill that settles into your bones until the coffee kicks in. I was halfway through replacing a section of busted fencing near the south side of the property when I noticed something odd at the front gate. From a distance, it looked like someone had parked a traffic cone next to the post. As I got closer, I realized it wasn't just a cone. It was a plastic barricade, the kind you see at utility sites, bright orange and stamped with the words "Under HOA Dispute, Entry Restricted." There were 3 of them. They had been zip-tied across my entry path, like some sort of barricade at a suburban crime scene. My gate itself, my damn gate, was wrapped in red caution tape, sloppily tied in loops with a piece of laminated paper stapled to the center. It flapped in the breeze, and I peeled it off to read, "Illegally occupied structure subject to HOA review pending eviction." I didn't know whether to laugh or to go grab my crowbar. My first instinct was to yank everything down and torch the signs in the fire pit out back. But then my training kicked in. Document first, react second. I grabbed my phone, took slow, steady photos from every angle. Close up, wide, time-stamped, GPS logged. Then I stepped back and hit the record button. This is Jordan Reeves. It's 07:43 hours. These items were not present at dusk yesterday. I have not received any legal notice of eviction. I own this land. The gate has been tampered with and obstructed. Marking for evidence, I cut the tape, snapped the zip ties, carefully stacked the barricades by the edge of the drive, just out of the way. I wasn't going to play their game, but I sure as hell was going to build my case. Back inside, I sat down at my laptop and wrote an email addressed to Karen Mason and the Willow Hills Extension HOA. The message was short, professional, and attached with the photos and my scanned deed. To whom it may concern, your personnel have placed signage and obstructions on private property not governed by your HOA charter. These actions constitute trespassing and defacement. I request an immediate cease and desist. Further interference will be documented and turned over to legal counsel. Jordan Reeves, legal owner of parcel YD number 0041-776B, Apping County Records attached. I CC'd the county clerk, just for good measure. I didn't get a reply. But I did get another surprise. That evening, just after sunset, I noticed movement on the driveway camera, 3 figures walking up the gravel in reflective vests. I didn't need to zoom in to know it was another HOA stunt. I grabbed my headset and activated the speaker connected to the porch lights. "You are being recorded," I said calmly. "You are currently trespassing. Please step off the property." One of them, a stocky guy with a clipboard, paused, then shouted, "We're here to issue final notice of non-compliance. You're subject to HOA injunction under section—" I didn't let him finish. "Step away from the gate or the sheriff's office will be called. This is your one and only warning." They muttered among themselves for a few seconds, then retreated the way they came, flashlight beams dancing in the brush. I watched them go, logged the footage, and added it to a folder I'd already titled HOA Harassment, Incident 2. The next morning, I had just finished laying out wiring conduits near the solar shed when a white SUV pulled up along the public road, just beyond my property line. Karen herself stepped out, same stiff posture, same power walk stride, but this time with a laminated binder under one arm. She didn't approach the gate, just stood there, glaring, then held the binder above her head like some kind of reverse peace offering. "Mr. Reeves," she called out, "you are in direct violation of community ordinance. I strongly suggest you come speak with the board before this escalates." I didn't say a word. I didn't wave. I just raised my phone, clicked record, and pointed the camera right at her. Karen stood there a moment longer, then turned, climbed back into her SUV, and peeled out down the road like she'd just been disrespected by royalty. I didn't know exactly what she planned next, but something in her eyes said I wasn't done with her yet. It was about 10:30 the next morning when I noticed the humming. Not from the trees or the insects. This was the mechanical kind, tires on gravel, low and steady. I looked up from the rain barrel I was installing to see 3 SUVs rolling slowly toward my gate. 2 of them were standard-issue law enforcement vehicles, decals for Apping County Sheriff's Office gleaming under the sun. The third one was harder to miss, black, overly polished, with a Willow Hills HOA magnetic sign slapped on the side like it belonged on a milk truck. I wiped the sweat from my brow and walked toward the gate, already pulling out the folder I had left by the door just in case. That folder had become my new best friend. Inside, my original tax deed, title transfer, plat map, proof of payment, zoning verification, and correspondence with the county. All in order, all legal. Karen was already there, standing at the side of the road, arms crossed like a judge on sentencing day. Her lipstick was sharper than usual, and beside her stood the same clipboard weasel from the first encounter, filming the whole thing on his phone like it was some grand exposé for local TV. One of the deputies stepped forward, tall guy, probably early 50s, gray mustache, mirrored sunglasses. His partner, younger, kept a hand casually near his belt, but didn't look particularly tense. "You, Mr. Reeves?" the older one asked, his tone neutral. I nodded. "Yes, sir." "Jordan Reeves, owner of this property." The deputy flicked a glance at Karen, then looked back at me. "We got a report from the Willow Hills Extension HOA. Allegation of illegal occupancy. They say the home was entered without permission, that you've refused to comply with local housing regulations." Karen stepped in before I could speak. "Officers, thank you for coming. This man has taken possession of a property that's under our jurisdiction. He's ignored repeated notices, refuses to register with the board, and has refused access to HOA inspection teams." The deputy held up a hand. "Ma'am, let's allow him to respond first." I opened the folder slowly, holding it out for the younger deputy. "Gentlemen, I purchased this property from the county in a public auction. It's unincorporated land, not within Willow Hills' designated boundaries. Here's the deed, plat map, title transfer, and sales certification, notarized, signed, dated. You're welcome to verify it." The deputy took the folder, flipping through it carefully. His eyes moved from line to line with practiced precision. He then turned to his partner, who was already walking along the perimeter, checking for survey markers. I knew they were there. I'd flagged them in bright orange 2 days ago. Karen was visibly squirming now. "This can't be right," she said, her voice cracking. "That land was always meant to be part of the Willow Hills expansion. The developer promised us—" The older deputy cut her off. "Promised isn't the same as filed, ma'am." He turned back to me. "Mr. Reeves, all your documents appear legitimate. The property is clearly marked as unincorporated. It's not in HOA territory, which means—" He turned back to Karen, slow and deliberate. "This is private land, not subject to HOA oversight, and not subject to any of your enforcement." Karen's face twisted. But he's living in one of our houses." "No," I said calmly. "I'm living in my house, paid for in full through the county. Your HOA never had claim to it, and you know that." The younger deputy returned. "Boundaries clean. Survey marker at the northwest and southeast corners. Matches the plat. No encroachments." Karen's voice began to rise. "You don't understand. This is a matter of community order. He doesn't belong here. He's armed. He's aggressive. He put up surveillance cameras. That's not regulation." The deputy sighed. "Ma'am, I don't know what you think HOA rules allow you to do, but none of this falls under criminal jurisdiction. You don't have any standing here. And quite frankly, falsely reporting a crime is a chargeable offense." Karen's expression shattered like a dropped plate. "You're taking his side? After everything I've done for this neighborhood? I am the president." She turned to the camera guy. "Keep filming this. These officers are obstructing HOA authority. They're refusing to arrest a known violator." "Ma'am, that's enough," the deputy said, voice firm now. "I'm going to need you to calm down, or we'll have to—" "I will not calm down," she screamed. "This is an illegal occupation. You're all complicit. I demand a citizen's arrest under HOA code." The younger deputy gave his partner a sideways look. "That a thing now?" The older one rubbed his temple and muttered, "Only in Fantasyland." At that point, Karen made a critical mistake. She marched up to the gate, reached between the bars, and tore down one of my posted signs with the property ID and legal description. Tore it clean off the post and threw it on the ground. The deputies didn't even need to discuss it. Within seconds, the younger one moved in and gently but firmly placed her in handcuffs. "Karen Mason," he said, You are being detained for destruction of private property, false reporting of a crime, and disorderly conduct. You have the right to remain silent." "You can't do this to me," she shrieked, thrashing against the cuffs. "I own this neighborhood. I built this street." "No, ma'am," the deputy said as he led her toward the SUV. "You built a headache." I stood there, arms crossed, watching as the HOA queen of the cul-de-sac was deposited into the back of a patrol car. Her camera guy looked like he was about to cry. Eventually, he packed up and drove off in silence. The deputies gave me back my folder and nodded respectfully. "You handled that pretty well," one of them said. "Let us know if anything else happens." "Oh," I said, "I've got a feeling this isn't over." 2 days after the arrest spectacle at my gate, I figured I'd earned a breather. I restocked my rain barrel system, cleaned out the ventilation in the crawl space, and even spent a good hour doing absolutely nothing. A rare luxury for a guy hardwired for perpetual readiness. But that sense of calm didn't last. It never does when your neighbor is a delusional tyrant with a clipboard and a vendetta. That morning, a letter arrived. Not a knock, not a drive-by. An actual certified envelope, hand-delivered by a courier. The return address? Willow Hills Extension Homeowners Association, now mysteriously signed by acting chairperson David Tullman. Apparently, Karen's replacement had arrived. Great. The contents were printed on heavy linen paper, like someone thought dressing it up would make the nonsense inside more official. It read like a legal document written by a drunk paralegal with a thesaurus addiction. Notice of historical boundary review. The property at 114 Beach Hollow Road is under formal review by the Willow Hills Extension HOA and its planning committee. Based on historical developer agreements and neighborhood covenants established in 2010, this land was improperly excluded from original zoning overlays due to administrative oversight. We are formally petitioning the Apping County Planning Board to reclassify the property as part of Willow Hills jurisdiction. This matter is pending review. All construction and modifications are to cease until jurisdiction is clarified. I read it twice, just to absorb the full gall of it. Then I laughed, out loud, bitterly, like a man watching raccoons try to open a locked safe with a stick. These people weren't giving up. They were just switching tactics. I scanned the letter, saved it, and immediately forwarded it to my attorney, Rachel Campbell. She called me less than 30 minutes later, already fired up. "They're trying to fabricate a boundary," she said. "This isn't just harassment. This is an attempt to retroactively rewrite zoning history." I could hear her flipping through documents. "I've pulled the original plat maps and annexation records. There's no mention of your parcel being under HOA control ever. I'll have a formal rebuttal filed with the county by end of day. We're also filing a motion to block any reclassification attempts and issuing a cease and desist against the HOA good," I said. "Because they're starting to play dirty." Turns out Rachel was already a step ahead. By the afternoon, she had submitted a formal complaint to the Apping County Planning Committee, complete with my deed, title chain, notarized statements, and satellite overlays, showing that my land was clearly outside HOA borders. On top of that, she filed for a temporary injunction, legally barring any member of the Willow Hills HOA from stepping foot on my land or filing further actions without court review. That same day, I went to the county surveyor's office to order an independent geodetic verification, drone-based, high-res, GPS stamped to the centimeter. The guy in the office, an older gentleman named Hal, took one look at the coordinates and chuckled. "Oh yeah, you're clear. Willow Hills stops about 200 feet south of your lowest marker. You're not just outside their jurisdiction, you're outside their fantasy." I took copies of everything, digital, printed, backed up on 2 drives. Rachel warned me to keep documenting, so I did. Cameras, time-stamped logs, cloud sync. My property was becoming Fort Evidence. 2 days later, another HOA stunt. I woke up to find a roll of flyers stuffed into my mailbox, taped to my gate, and fluttering from nearby tree trunks like some passive-aggressive infestation. Community notice, occupation of illegitimate structure. Jordan Reeves refuses to comply with Willow Hills community standards. Pending legal action. They had even stapled one to a wooden stake and driven it into the ditch near my mailbox like it was a goddamn yard sale. I yanked it out, dragged it to the fire pit, and burned the whole stack, but not before photographing every last one. Later that day, Rachel called with news that made me stop mid-sip of coffee. They submitted forged boundary maps to the planning board. My hand tightened around the mug. "Say that again?" they submitted a map from 2010 with a redrawn borderline that includes your property. But here's the problem. They used a version of the survey that didn't exist until 2015. I checked the watermark. It's a forgery. They actually forged a government document? Yes. And now it's officially a criminal matter. She didn't sound amused. By sunset, Rachel had forwarded the evidence to the county legal office and initiated a complaint with the state's Attorney General's Zoning Fraud Division. I emailed the deputy I'd met earlier and let him know things had escalated. That night, I installed 2 more motion sensors on the eastern tree line. I didn't know what their next move would be, but I had a feeling it wouldn't be through paperwork. The weather turned just as I expected. Cold front rolling in off the hills, wind sharp enough to strip bark. I spent the better part of the day tightening down the rain tarps, reinforcing the shed's solar panel braces, and testing my battery banks. You don't live this far from town without knowing how to survive 3 days without power and 5 without plumbing. I had just finished reprogramming my perimeter alerts when something on the monitor glitched. It was almost 3 in the morning. I had a motion-activated system set to ping me whenever anything crossed the southern tree line. Usually it was raccoons, maybe a deer, but this time it was 2 human-shaped blobs creeping low across the ditch like they thought they were ghosts. They were coming in through the back. Not the road, not the path, the woods. The thermal camera caught them clearly. Both were wearing dark jackets, each with a large white patch on the back. One said HOAPATROL. The other simply had ENFORCEMENT. For a second, I actually thought I was dreaming. It was just too absurd. They were making their way across my yard in the middle of the night like some kind of neighborhood SEAL team. And they weren't just snooping. They had tools. One of them tried to jimmy open the door of my storage shed with what looked like a crowbar, while the other stood lookout by the brush, a flashlight with the beam covered by his palm. My shed, with my tools, my gear, my records, my cameras. Bad call. I tapped the trigger on the alarm app. A second later, the yard exploded with light and sound. Motion floods kicked on. The high-frequency screech of the alarm wailed into the trees, and the hidden speaker began blasting the pre-recorded message I had prepared for exactly this kind of idiocy. Warning. Illegal trespassing. You are being recorded. Authorities have been notified. They froze like animals caught in a trap. One of them dropped the crowbar and tried to sprint. The other just stood there, stunned, until the voice message looped again. I got a clear shot of both their faces. Cameras didn't miss a thing. Neither did I. I didn't go outside. I didn't need to. I just forwarded the clips, along with the GPS stamp, timestamps, and license plate footage from the roadside cam to the Apping County Sheriff's Department. Then I poured a cup of black coffee, sat on the porch, and waited for the cavalry. By sunrise, 2 squad cars rolled up. I walked them through everything. I didn't need to say much. The footage spoke for itself. They watched the replay 3 times. One of the deputies, the same guy who'd laughed at Karen a few days earlier, let out a slow whistle. "Recognize that guy," he muttered, pointing at the screen. "That's Kyle Mason, Karen's son. Says he's part of their security detail." The second officer rolled his eyes. Security detail. Since when does a neighborhood watch carry pry bars at 3 a.m.? They made a few calls, and by late afternoon, both of the intruders were in custody, one for trespassing and attempted burglary, the other for conspiracy. Charges were filed. Body cams recorded it all. Later that evening, Rachel called. She had received word from the sheriff's office and was already drafting a motion for a protective injunction against Kyle and the entire HOA patrol group. "We're adding counts of intimidation, unlawful surveillance, and criminal mischief," she said. They just escalated this to a whole new level. I walked the property that night, flashlight in one hand, 45 on my hip. I wasn't scared, just alert. Because these people, these self-anointed suburban warlords, had officially crossed the line from nuisance to threat. And threats I don't ignore. By the next morning, the whispers had turned into thunder. News of the break-in spread faster than a brush fire in dry timber. Local forums lit up with speculation. Neighborhood group chats exploded. Someone leaked the footage, grainy black and white clips of Kyle Mason skulking across my lawn like a discount ninja, flashlight in hand, crowbar glinting under the motion lights. Within hours, a Facebook page titled HOA Tyranny Watch had reposted the video with a caption, "This is not security. This is criminal. I didn't leak it, but I didn't stop it either." By noon, Rachel had already filed for a temporary restraining order and notified the county of active criminal behavior by registered HOA board members. The sheriff's department backed the filing. The footage was enough to fast-track the process. And then the fallout began. The Apping County Board of Zoning sent a public letter to the Willow Hills HOA, suspending all pending complaints, appeals, or boundary filings until ongoing criminal matters are resolved. Translation: their plan to rewrite the map just flatlined. And then came the meeting. That evening, Willow Hills held an emergency board session, not in the usual clubhouse but over video call, presumably because no one wanted another body cam moment. Someone leaked the full recording to me through an anonymous Proton mail address. I watched it twice. Karen wasn't present, but her name came up. Oh, it came up plenty. The HOA board was eating itself alive. One guy, bald with a goatee, kept shouting that Karen had gone rogue, while another woman screamed that she had warned them about using her son as muscle. Acting Chair David Tolman tried to keep order but was visibly sweating through his collar. Then the vote came up. Motion: remove Karen Mason from all HOA positions, privileges, and rights. It passed. Unanimously. Not a single hand raised in her defense. The very same night, the sheriff's department issued a misdemeanor warrant for Karen's arrest for filing a false police report, criminal impersonation, and obstruction of justice, based on both the original call about me stealing the house and the new revelations about Kyle. She was picked up without much fanfare at her sister's house 2 towns over. According to the deputy who called me the next morning, Karen screamed something about militias and government corruption as she was loaded into the cruiser. I would have paid to see that. As for Kyle, he was released on bail the next day, but the judge ordered him to wear an ankle monitor and banned him from entering within 200 yards of my property. That afternoon, Rachel called with an update I hadn't seen coming. "Jordan," she said, "I just got off the phone with a contact at the Georgia Real Property Authority. Turns out Karen had been filing a number of documents over the last year, attempting to claim zoning oversight, establish utility servitudes, and even petition for HOA expansion under the radar. And she forged signatures." Whose signatures? 3 former residents, one of whom died in 2021. I exhaled sharply. "She's looking at real time, Jordan." Good, because it was never about the HOA rules. It was about power, control, her little suburban kingdom. And now the queen was in freefall. I thought things might settle down after Karen's arrest. Foolish in hindsight. When people like that lose their grip on power, they don't vanish quietly. They detonate on the way out. And even stripped of her title, Karen still had loyalists, or rather sycophants too scared or too arrogant to back down. It started small, subtle. The kind of stuff you might chalk up to bad luck if you weren't paying attention. One morning, I came outside to find that my mailbox had been stuffed with a dozen identical HOA violation notices, each one printed, laminated, and shoved into a bright yellow envelope. The paper was blank on the back. No sender address, no signature, just a list of non-compliances like unauthorized perimeter fencing and use of non-regulation exterior paint colors. It would have been hilarious if it wasn't so pathetic. Then I found my main water line had been tampered with. It took me 3 hours to realize why the pressure was gone. Someone had used a pipe wrench to loosen the valves near the filtration system behind the shed. I keep that area padlocked, and the lock wasn't broken. It had been picked. I changed the locks that night, upgraded the trail cams, even installed infrared motion triggers along the back fence. My place looked like a miniature NORAD station by the time I was done, but the next blow didn't come under cover of darkness. It came in the form of a formal letter from the Willow Hills HOA's new acting chair, David Tolman, certified mail, proper stationery, notice of administrative motion regarding parcel realignment and jurisdiction review. The HOA was attempting to formally petition the county to redraw district boundaries, retroactively placing my land within their charter. They were trying to use the ongoing zoning ambiguity as a wedge. Again, Rachel was furious. "They're still pushing this narrative of historical inclusion," she said, flipping through the enclosed packet. But this time, they're using a different tactic, claiming a legacy agreement from the 1980s with the original developer. "What agreement?" I asked. "One that doesn't exist, at least not in any public registry." She filed an emergency challenge the same day, requesting immediate review of any such documentation. Within 48 hours, the county clerk confirmed that no such agreement had ever been notarized or recorded. But it raised another question. How were they even making these filings? We found the answer buried in a scanned PDF attached to the latest motion. It was subtle, but damning. A signature that appeared on the supposed legacy map under the title Planning Liaison belonged to none other than Karen Mason. Signed 2 months after her removal and 3 weeks after her arrest. We cross-referenced the digital metadata. Rachel's contact at the clerk's office confirmed the file had been uploaded from a residential IP address in Willow Hills, the same one Kyle used during his house arrest check-ins. Karen's ghostwriting legal motions? I asked. Looks like it. And using her son's access to do it, we sent all the evidence to the county inspector general. By the end of the week, a full investigation was underway into fraudulent filings and impersonation of public officials. But the damage was already done. Karen's loyalists had kicked the hornet's nest one last time, and I had had enough. I contacted a friend of mine from my Navy days, Trevor, now working in private investigations and land dispute consultation. He flew in the next day, drone gear and all. Time to put some eyes in the sky, I told him. Let's see what these wannabe tyrants have been up to behind the hedges. Because if they wanted to drag this into the dirt, I was about to bury them in it. Trevor worked fast. The man had that quiet, relentless Navy energy, efficient, no wasted motion. Within hours of touchdown, he had launched a compact drone the size of a football over Willow Hills. It looked like a hummingbird, but it had night vision, thermal, and geofencing capabilities. We called it Karen Watch 1. By the second evening, we had results. The drone picked up a late-night gathering behind one of the HOA board members' homes, Tolman's place to be exact. 4 people in folding chairs, laptops out, files stacked on a table like they were running some bootleg city council. One of them, though it was hard to see clearly, had Karen's posture. Not her, maybe, but someone carrying orders. Trevor zoomed in and froze the footage. They were editing documents, maps, the same damn maps we'd seen before. The next day, we submitted everything to the county inspector general. We included timestamps, flight logs, screenshots, and a compiled report from Trevor's firm. Rachel packaged it with a request for civil injunctive relief and a cease and desist order against the HOA's continued administrative filings. 2 days later, it went to court. The hearing was short. A judge, stern, tired-looking, and clearly unimpressed, reviewed the evidence in silence. He asked one question. Is the defendant association claiming jurisdiction over land it does not own, did not zone, and has no recorded authority to govern? Tolman mumbled something about historical intention and community cohesion. The judge held up a page from our packet. Then why is this document signed by a private citizen 3 weeks after her arrest for false reporting? Silence. Judgment came down like a hammer. The court declared the HOA's boundary motion fraudulent. All related filings were voided. Furthermore, the judge granted my motion for permanent injunctive relief, meaning no HOA-related entity may contact me, enter my property, or attempt to govern any portion of it ever again. But it didn't stop there. Karen Mason was summoned for a separate hearing, this time on charges of document fraud, impersonation of a public official, and conspiracy to commit administrative sabotage. Kyle was implicated as an accomplice. The state prosecutor got involved. Karen's lawyer tried to delay proceedings, citing emotional distress. It didn't work. 6 weeks later, the final judgment came down. Karen was found guilty on multiple misdemeanor and felony counts. She avoided jail time by taking a plea, but the terms were brutal. She owed me $175,000 in damages, had to publicly recant all claims to my property, and was legally barred from participating in any HOA board for life. The HOA dissolved quietly a month later. No board, no budget, no charter, just a cluster of overpriced homes and bitter lawn wars. As for me, I put up a new sign at the front gate. Plain cedar branded with a torch logo and carved in bold lettering, private land, not HOA property. Trespassers will be posted online. I added a YouTube channel too. The Landline. Weekly updates, advice for landowners, breakdowns of how to defend your property rights against HOA tyranny. The first video, How I Beat a Fake HOA Coup, hit 50,000 views in a week. People were hungry for it. And I was done hiding. The woods were mine now. The silence, the pines, the open sky. No meetings, no patrols, No laminated notices, just me, the fire pit, and the soft crackle of real freedom.